making a short survival game about being stranded on a remote planet. And in these past couple months, I added mechanics like enemies, using and crafting tools, mining for resources, and rover traversal. And today, I'll kind of be showing you some of that progress. There's just one huge glaring issue. I plan on releasing this game on Steam, and I've literally never done that before in my life. All my games up to now have been very short game jam games, so to actually make something worth a few bucks is a huge undertaking. And so the very first thing that I need to get down is a working prototype. So there are a lot of survival games out there like Minecraft, Don't Starve, Left 4 Dead. Well, what kind of game will mine be? Well, my favorite survival games are the over-the-shoulder action-based ones, like Dead Space and Resident Evil 2 Remake. So with the help of Cinemachine, I got a nice little third-person camera going, and I also added some basic terrain, with lumps and bumps, just to give it a rocky world for starters. I knew I wanted some light mining mechanics, some way for the player to survive off the land they are in. Well, you see, the problem is that mining has been done thousands of times in games. So how in the world do I make mining gameplay unique? So I turned to an unlikely source of inspiration. Right. Did you catch it? Yes, I took the Gears of War Reload QuickTime event as the main inspiration for mining. This is the minigame for harvesting oxygen. All you gotta do is get the bar in the middle. Oxygen is the main resource you have to worry about. On this planet, there are only trace amounts of oxygen spewing from these craters. When you walk up to the crater, your current oxygen tank will refill. There's also usually a plant nearby that you can harvest to get a backup oxygen tank. The metal mining game is a bit similar at the moment, but you have 3 chances to get this resource. With metal, you can craft tools like a drill. The drill will help you mine more easily, but be careful because all tools that you craft have a certain amount of uses before they disappear. You can also use these resources to invest in upgrades for the player, like additional health, backup oxygen tanks, and more that I'll talk about later. Okay, great. We got character and camera movement, some resources to mine and gather, and the ability to use those resources to craft things to aid in surviving. It's starting to have some legs here. Now, if I'm going to give a literal planet for the player to explore, they should be able to get around kind of quickly. So tell me, how does your local astronaut get around planets filled with the unknown? Well, they don't. It doesn't exist yet, so I have to get inspiration from the next best thing. The Martian is one of my all-time favorite movies, and here the main character traverses this planet in a human-operated rover, so that's what I'm going for. In the beginning, it was just a box that was butt-scooting on the ground, and for a while I was like, yeah, that'll do. But really, I was actually overwhelmed with the thought of making a whole working vehicle complete with suspension, torque, and acceleration. Wait, Unity has a built-in wheel collider system that imitates just that?
Know the feeling of taking a hot dump at your rich friend's house?
So yeah, that came out much better than expected. Yeah, that turned out to not really be too much work. Alright, so the rover had a tendency to flip over, and this was a problem because once you flip over, the rover is soft locked. There's no way of getting it back upright and you're left without a vehicle. So at first I tried tweaking the values so that it won't flip just by turning it too fast, but that still didn't cover the endless ways the terrain will be generated and players will easily be able to flip the car just by driving off a cliff. So I knew that players will be flipping the rover no matter how many values I adjust, so it wasn't enough. After embracing the fact that it will be flipping, I asked, how do we let the player flip it back over? I decided to add this arm to the car that kind of opens and closes if you press a button, and in every test I've done so far, it always flips the car right side up. I also like the idea of instead of preventing the player from doing something that might be a bad thing for gameplay, let them do what they want and then give them the tools to fix the issue themselves. This gives them much more freedom to play with the systems the game offers and ways to problem solve that leads to that flow that we're trying to hit. This arm is also going to double as a sort of radar scanner for the player to more easily find resources around the map, but that feature will be added in a future video. The other problematic way the car could flip is by landing on its side. The arm can't do anything to stop that. So I decided to go undercover real quick, be all sneaky like, and add 2 invisible cylindrical colliders to each side of the rover. This way, if it falls on its side, it will always end up rolling off of these round colliders onto its back or right side up again. And there we go. We have mining resources, rover traversal. This is starting to feel more multi-dimensional, but we're not just there yet. That comes to the enemies you find in the game. These guys act as the guardians over the more valuable resources in the game, like uranium. Essentially, they're very attracted to the resource and act as an extra barrier for the player to overcome if they want to mine the more valuable resources. They're just cylinders right now, but don't worry about that. For starters, I wanted 1 ground enemy and and 1 flying enemy. So the movement code for the flying enemy is pretty easy. It just moves randomly in the air and shoots at you with a 3-pronged attack when you get close enough. And the attack is a slight homage to this guy from Dead Space. Always hated that thing. The ground enemy was a bit more complicated because it has to be wary of the terrain and other things it could collide into. This guy throws a lob attack like Tom Brady in the Super Bowl near the player, and on impact it divides into 8 directions. I purposely made the projectiles bullet hell-like since they are very easy to make, and I can make a variety of different paths and attack styles without too much extra work. Also because I just think it's fun weaving in and out of projectiles like you do in other bullet hell games. The final thing to mention is how I'm currently doing the art style. See, I'm not good at art. I also have a limited time and budget. I'm broke. And I want to make it as easy as possible to model something simple, throw it in the game, and it looked decent. So I went with this toonish looking shader and noticed it can be affected heavily by how the light source is lighting up the scene. This gave me the idea to add a day-night system for a more dynamic look, and so far I have this. I've added 7 different options for the nighttime lighting. I really like this because it prevents the game from looking too boring. The colors constantly changing and everything getting the tint of that color makes the same landscape feel very different, and it makes the environment feel more alive, and it gives off the vibe that time is constantly moving whether the player is or not. And I'll definitely be expanding on this more in future videos. The terrain still needs some work as it's tough to understand the depth sometimes, especially as it gets darker. It looks like the player is kind of getting lost in a void, but all of that and much more will be in future videos in this series. Please subscribe to the channel as I'm trying to hit 1K, and I'll have a Steam page up really soon so you can wishlist the game.